afternoon, everyone, and welcome to JMT's webinar today. We're going to wait another minute to get started. We still have some people that are getting logged on, so we will be right back, and we appreciate your patience. Okay, thank you again for joining JMT Consulting. I'm Melissa Waters, the Manager of Events and Programs at JMT. We are happy to have Clark Muse and Jeff Priest from Vena presenting today on Supercharge your fp&A processes while escaping Excel hell with Vena. This webinar is sponsored by JMT Consulting. We're an ERP and financial management solutions firm with 28 years experience that specializes in nonprofits. And we work with a wide variety of software partners to find the best solutions for your nonprofit. I'd like to share a few housekeeping notes today, and then I'll turn it over to Clark and Jeff. If you have any questions during the webinar, please submit your question in the toolbox on your control panel that says questions. We will answer those at the end of the webinar. You will also receive a short survey at the end of the webinar to tell us how we did today. And today's webinar is being recorded, and you will be sent a recording and the slides tomorrow in your email. Finally, I'd like to introduce Clark and Jeff. Clark is the Vice President of Corporate Development for Vena. For the better part of 2 decades, he has helped hundreds of organizations streamline their decision-making processes to become more effective. And Jeff is the Director of Solution Engineering for Vena. And over the course of his career, Jeff's extensive experience with multiple financial software vendors allows him to demonstrate Vena's strategic differentiation and address its numerous use cases, including financial close management, rolling forecasts, strategic planning and balance scoreboards, and regulatory reporting and disclosure. And with that, Clark and Jeff, I'll hand it over to you.
Great, thanks, Melissa. So as Melissa mentioned, my name is Clark Muse. I'm delighted to be here today. We're going to walk through a few slides here, specifically on how to supercharge your Excel-based processes while removing Excel hell from your environment. And then we're going to walk through 5 of the key elements to watch out for, essentially. And then Jeff's going to show you how the Vena solution leverages these key tactics to streamline and automate and de-risk these various Excel-based processes. And then at the end, another thing that Melissa's going to do is we've produced a white paper that contains all 10 key elements or key things to look out for. So to begin with, as everyone probably recognizes, over the past 20 years, organizations have made significant investments in financial accounting technologies like ERP systems, fp&A solutions, and others to help automate specific business processes like transactional processing, planning, budgeting, and forecasting, financial consolidation and reporting, and many others. Further, many organizations have invested in BI or business intelligence initiatives, mostly involving analytic reporting of sales and other operational activities. These solutions, generally speaking, have delivered value in most cases. However, despite these solutions, many organizations continue to maintain and use Excel extensively in support of various sidebar processes. The question is, how do we streamline and de-risk these Excel-based processes? So I want to begin by describing 2 situations we see most often. The first are situations where organizations become overly dependent on numerous Excel spreadsheets that are loosely linked together and distributed and collected amongst lots of individuals to support a particular collaborative process. The most common process I like to use as an example is budgeting and forecasting, where you're distributing and collecting spreadsheets constantly. The second situation that we see most often in the marketplace are organizations that have already invested in some sort of technology to help automate the fp&A process, the financial planning and analysis process. Many of these are considered corporate performance management or enterprise performance management solutions. These solutions promote the replacement of Excel and many times blame Excel for all the problems organizations experience. And they're partially correct on this point, as we'll see shortly. But the idea here is that most organizations still continue to use Excel extensively despite their investments in these various solutions for various processes. And there's reasons for this, and I'll describe these in a moment. So the reality is that there's a natural lure to using Excel, and this gravity affects us all. Excel is everywhere. It's on most people's desktops. It's extremely flexible and very easy to use, and most business people know how to use it and know it well. It has powerful analytics, formatting, and charting capabilities, and it's quick and easy to set up and use, essentially. But what happens over time is that these simple spreadsheets very quickly evolve into an uncontrollable and unsustainable mess. Once you begin using these spreadsheets in a collaborative environment with lots of data and calculations, the risks increase immensely, and the effort required to manage and maintain these spreadsheet environments become unsustainable. I'm sure you've all experienced issues like these before, like the lack of version control or the inability to track changes within the spreadsheets themselves, or the challenges associated with distributing spreadsheets, collecting those spreadsheets back from people who have input data, and then trying to consolidate those spreadsheets. And the whole idea of rekeying data over and over and over again from source systems into your spreadsheets is just a very unsustainable situation. And there's, of course, inherent risks in all of these things. So over the years, over the past 15 years or so, there's been a quest from various software vendors to replace Excel. And they tend to blame Excel for all the problems organizations experience, as I mentioned before. And again, they're partially correct on this point. These solutions provide significant benefits and have positive attributes. For example, they typically deliver a centralized approach with a controlled environment, a high degree of integrity, strong workflow, and they're highly auditable. They also provide a high degree of functionality specific to certain business processes like financial consolidation, for example, or planning and budgeting, those types of things. Most of these software suite of products, as they're often referred to, are really a collage of tools acquired over time that have been integrated. And that integrated is in quotes, whereby each tool within the suite typically addresses a single application area like budgeting or BI reporting or financial consolidation, etc. The problem is that this approach requires multiple licenses, multiple installations, multiple implementations, and they often require error-prone data movement across each component within the suite of their products. This increases greatly the cost to deploy and the cost to maintain. And what happens very often is companies and people who invest in these solutions tend to revert back to using Excel in the first place. So, the reality is that many organizations that invest in these solutions, as I mentioned, revert back to Excel, and either for all of the process or a portion of the process. And there's reasons for this. The rigidity of many of these other replace Excel solutions can be problematic. They're just not flexible enough. The replace Excel approach that many vendors promote forces users to compromise, to do something that's not quite Excel. It also has the inability to easily maintain and sustain the solution, which affects agility of the organization, accommodate changes in the business. And the overall cost to own over time becomes very prohibitive. So at the end of the day, we feel like Excel is here to stay, and we don't expect it to go away anytime soon. So what can organizations do to embrace Excel while streamlining Excel-based processes and de-risking these collaborative and repeated processes? So we're going to share with you today these 5 approaches. Now, we've included 10 in the white paper, but we're going to have time today to talk through and describe 5 key approaches or methods for you to consider to streamline your Excel-based processes while reducing risks at the same time. These approaches are not in any order or ranked in any way. They've been collected from the hundreds of successful customer engagements that Vena and JMT have executed over the years. Jeff will then follow later in a moment with a demonstration of how our approach works in context of these 5 key elements, in a way that this solution, in a way in which this solution can supercharge your organization by increasing efficiencies, reducing risks, and allow you to become far more effective by leveraging and embracing Excel instead of trying to replace it. So this could be an obvious one for most of the attendees here, but manually keying data into Excel is not only very laborious, but it's a primary source of errors. And what I'm referring to here is the manual keying of data into worksheet cells, but I'm also including the idea of copying and pasting data into sheets as well, or exporting data into Excel sheets. Once the data has been keyed in, it's immediately outdated and stale. What I mean by that is that if the data needs to be refreshed, it has to be done manually each and every time. So think about taking financial data out of your general ledger and plopping it into an Excel workbook. As soon as you do that, it becomes a primary source of errors, because as soon as that general ledger changes, now the data in your spreadsheet is out of date. It's incorrect. So these risks are very significant as well. Of course, you run the risk of rekeying or keying in the wrong data, or mistyping data, or fat fingering data. But again, the biggest risk involves the staleness of the data itself. If the data needs to be refreshed, how do you ensure that the data has been refreshed appropriately? Unless you can guarantee that the data will never change, every manually entered piece of data into a spreadsheet is a source of errors and risks. Also, kind of, if it's not obvious, this is a very time-consuming process and requires lots of manual effort and lots of time required to check and recheck for errors. The second key element here is, or the second approach, is to eliminate the use of cell-based functions that link or reference other workbooks. It's very tempting to do this. I mean, Excel works great. It works, quite nifty for, a few spreadsheets and things like that. It's very tempting to do this. But what happens is you end up getting these pound reference errors. As soon as the directory or folder structure changes, or as soon as you move a spreadsheet, all of a sudden these links break. And as you're probably aware, it's very difficult to kind of debug where these broken links are and what impact that has on the spreadsheets themselves. As soon as you move a file, or someone inserts a column in the wrong place, you end up generating broken links all over the place. Further, using cell-based functions to pull data from databases or cubes can also be problematic, for the most part for the same reason. The reason for this is that the functions require references to databases or cube connections, dimensions, or other parameters which seem benign at first. But these referenced cells are usually stored in hidden sheets, in hidden rows, or hidden columns. The problem occurs when the reference cells driving these functions become corrupted or contain unexpected values. When this occurs, the results become broken, or even worse, the results can contain invalid data and can go undetected and cause decisions to be made with the wrong information. This happened recently, about 2 years ago, to a very large city where their budget was underestimated by $45 million. And it became apparent 9 months later. And they found out that the root cause was an invalid reference cell that was hidden in a row or a column that was used in a function, an Excel function, to prepare the budget data, to prepare the budget. So it was impossible to detect this unless you eyeballed it, and it caused a lot of grief for that particular entity. The third approach is to utilize a single centralized repository to hold the spreadsheets themselves, the data that are used to populate the spreadsheets, including the numerical facts, the narratives, and the text, and any supporting documentation or supporting models. Essentially, everything related to a process should be held centrally. The central repository enables collaboration and sharing of information. For example, data sitting in Joe's spreadsheet in London can be instantly available to Sally's spreadsheet, who happens to be in New York, security permitting, of course. This eliminates the need to send spreadsheets or other containers of data via email or shared file servers. Sally doesn't have to sift through all of her emails to find the right version of Joe's spreadsheet. She can rest assured that the numbers from Joe are always the most current. A central repository also enables version control of the spreadsheets, version control of the data itself. This eliminates the ambiguity of the data set, ambiguity of which data set is correct and which spreadsheet is the latest. Versioning and data staleness, again, are primary sources of risks, and there's a lot of time spent in managing and mitigating this risk. In the previous approach, we saw how changes and updates can flow instantly across the organization from Joe's spreadsheet, in this case, to Sally's, and the value derived from that. In this method or approach, the idea is to provide instant results to any of the changes that have been made. In many spreadsheet processes, there are a cascading series of interdependencies across spreadsheets and workbooks and cell values. The idea behind this approach is that the effects of changes need to be instantly available. So anything that's dependent on the underlying numbers need to be reconsolidated, recalculated instantly, without any ambiguity or any time wasted or thinking about when is it going to be calculated. Again, it's traditional spreadsheet-based processes. After the data is collected, the dependent data must be recalculated and reconsolidated. This would traditionally require a, quote, consolidation workbook to pull the data together and recalculate and reconsolidate the results. With many legacy enterprise solutions, this requires a, quote, consolidation process to be executed, or a restructuring of the cubes or databases, which can take a few minutes. In many cases, it can take a few hours or more. The ability to have real-time, instant results removes the uncertainty of the result set. So you know when you're looking at a consolidated P&L, it's being consolidated, or it contains all of the underlying values that are currently present. You always want to know that you have confidence in the numbers as well as in the process, too. Okay, the fifth and last item here before we get to the demo is the whole idea of leveraging a proper workflow and process management capability. For this method, we recommend utilizing some type of process management and workflow to manage the process. It's not just the numbers that need high integrity, but it's the process as well. Most every collaborative process that has 5 or 10 participants will benefit immensely from a workflow capability, a status tracking capability, and a process management component to the solution. This becomes especially important when you're distributing spreadsheets to lots of participants, when you're expecting individuals to provide data or input into these spreadsheets, when you're trying to collect these spreadsheets and consolidate them for final review. Further, it becomes critically important when you have tight deadlines and little fluff time baked into the process. The amount of time individuals spend thinking about their next task, when does it start, when is it due, things like that is very considerable. In aggregate, the time and energy is very significant. Not having visibility into the exact status of where all the participants are in the process leads to a cloud of uncertainty, which creates more work to manually keep track of everything. Okay? So just to recap and reemphasize, and we're going to share with you kind of the way we've done things with Vena. But to recap and reemphasize, it's important that any type of collaborative-based solution like what we're going to show you, that it coexists properly with other systems, with other platforms, and even other spreadsheets and things that you might have already. Things like your ERP or your general ledger, or even other analytical solutions like data warehouses or BI systems. It's important that these types of systems, like we're going to show you, can work in conjunction and in tandem with these existing systems. We don't want to necessarily replace everything. We want to leverage the investments that you've already made in these solutions. But the key here is that you want to supercharge the value of all of these solutions while eliminating the risks. You want to enjoy high user adoption, since the participants will, be able to keep using Excel and keep using the solution that they're familiar with. And you want a solution that you're able to maintain over time, and it provides agility that can change with the rapid change of your business, and to be able to make adjustments far quicker and easily as things change. The key to this is balancing between the highly rigid enterprise platforms like a general ledger that are slow to change, and the flexibility that spreadsheets offer. So it's the balance between the two, and it's critically important that they certainly complement each other as you move forward. So with that, Jeff, I'll make you the presenter, and I'm going to be monitoring the questions as we go through this. So feel free to ask questions as needed, and we will show you our approach to addressing these 5 key items in a comprehensive enterprise solution for FP&A in this case.
Thanks, Clark. So I'm going to walk through a couple of different roles. We'll go in as an end user, and we're going to take a look at inputting some data. We'll also look at some reports, and it'll really reinforce a lot of the things that Clark was talking about in the PowerPoint, especially those 5 key areas that he talked about. And then at the close of this, we're going to go in as more of a power user or an administrator, and we'll look at the workflow, the status tracking, and a few other things as well. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and log into the application. As I log in, I'm coming in through a browser, an easy entry point, something that most people are familiar with. So I've logged in as that end user. As you look at this, I'm presented with a list of the jobs or tasks that have been assigned to me. You can see that I'm responsible for several departmental budgets. I've got access to a reporting package, and I also have view-only access to a couple of departmental budgets. These tasks can also have due dates associated with them. This particular example, my Department 101 budget is overdue, so it's come to the top of the stack and is highlighted in red. So one place here, I've got a nice, neat list of not only what I'm responsible for, but the corresponding due dates as well. Clicking on one of these due dates, I get a little call out over here on the right-hand side. Let me explain what we're looking at here. I can see the process that this is part of. Instructions. This is designed to be an outline or a bullet-pointed list, but there is also supporting documents. In my example, a budget calendar and budget guidelines. But the idea here is that instead of looking through email or going to a network share drive, I can come out here, I can see exactly new information. If there are new regulations or new corporate procedures that I need to follow, those can be posted and made available here within the application. Down here in the forms area, there's 5 forms that I need to fill out. You can have 1 form here, you can have X number of forms here. It's entirely your choice. You'll also see that these are all XLS files. These are indeed Excel files, but they've got that database behind them. So as you'll see in a few moments, security, integrity, auditability, all of the things that you don't get in a disconnected or discrete Excel environment. Now, while I can submit data from any or all of these forms, once I've completed my budget, I can go up here and click on Submit. This is where workflow comes into the process, in that I've turned it over to my manager for review. I can't make any further changes or updates to the data. My manager can then either approve it, allowing the process to move forward, or reject it. I'll get an email. I can go in, make further changes, updates as I need to, and we can go through that review process as many times as necessary. Let me open up one of these files, and you'll see how we interact with Excel. So I'll open up my non-labor expense budget here. And as I open this up, what you'll see happen is it's opening Excel on my local desktop, but I'm presented with some choices. I can choose the year that I want to work on, as well as the scenario. So for instance, I can have budget or forecast version 1, etc. Clicking on OK, it refreshes with information. So I'm still using Excel, but I'm using Excel as a window or a lens to an application database. You see across the top here, File Home Insert Page Layout. It's 100% native Excel, but I have the Vena ribbon, which is allowing Excel to interact or communicate with that Vena application. As I come down here, if I want to input some data, I'll input 1,000 here for advertising for January. Once I've done that, I can click on Save Data, and it is submitted into the application. So really, while I'm keying in data here, I key it in once, and I can report on it multiple times. So I really eliminate the need to rekey or link files together. As we'll see in a few moments, I can trace these links through and see the lineage assorted or associated with any of the data. If I expand this out a little bit, I also have access to actual information. If I come down here and I try to type over it, it's been locked. I can't make any changes or updates to it, but I can drill to the transactional detail behind it. If I do that drill to transactions, it will return the transactions, but only the transactions appropriate for the cell that I drilled from, namely Department 101, Advertising for January. So you can see here from an end user perspective, it's pretty straightforward to use. I can navigate it pretty easily. If I already know how to use Excel, I'm pretty much good to go. Let me make some changes to this data now. If I come in here, let's make that 1,100. I'm going to put 1,200 here. If I swipe those two cells, drag them across, standard Excel functionality there, the ability to do that. But I also give you the capability of extending these schedules or extending this functionality. From an end user perspective, I could add another tab here. In my example, I already have a scratch pad. It's my advertising model. I've got an Acrobat document. I've got some vendor information. But if I come to my input template now, I can just say equals, and I can link down to that cell on the scratch pad. But when I save the data, not only am I saving the 11,500, but I'm saving this scratch pad, this supplemental data. So I don't have to link files together any longer. Vena becomes the one place where I have that repository of all the facts, the narratives, the supporting details, etc. within the application. And as we'll see in a few moments, I can get to it from a reporting standpoint. Let me showcase a couple of other data input ways. If I come down here, let's say that I want to input a yearly amount. I have some spreading capabilities. So let's take $15,000 and let's spread it out. And how do I want to spread it? I'm going to spread it on prior year, taking into account any historical trends or seasonality that existed in prior year information. So I have this ability to input a yearly amount. Lastly here, if I want to go below the GL or ERP account line, I can get to line item detail. The way that I do that is I can expand the template out, allowing me in this example to input the various promotions that I'm going to be running and putting accounts or amounts for those various promotions. So if you think about what I've just done here, I've got one template that I can use across different departments, across different scenarios, across different views of data or different departments, different accounts, etc. But it's all going to be consolidated into one place for aggregation and reporting purposes. And I've got that instant recalculation. As soon as I submit it, I can run a report and see the results at total department, total organization, etc. Let me go ahead and save this data, and this will bring up another value point. If I click on Save Data here, I get a little reminder. Some of my expenses are greater than a defined threshold above last year. Please enter a comment. In this particular template, if anything is 20% above last year, denoted by the red X's, I need to input some comments, some explanation as to why these items are 20% above last year. So again, if you're working in a disconnected Excel environment, this just isn't available. Pretty much, users can put in whatever they want, they email their templates in, and the challenge is you begin looking at it, seeing that expenses have exceeded a certain threshold, or they're way higher than we thought they were going to be. But in Vena, I've got that validation or thresholding going on. Once I've done that, I can click Save Data. It will pass the validation and submit that information in. And again, you'll get tired of hearing me say this. but that's been instantly recalculated. So it's available if I were to run a report, which is what I'm going to do in just a few moments. Let's talk about audit trail. If you think about Excel, Excel is a great program, but when you do file save, the old, all intents and purposes, is gone. But in Vena, I have an audit trail. If I click on audit trail here, what you'll see come up is every time that I click that save data button, it's created a row here. If I select the last two and do a compare, it will highlight for me the differences between those two times that I clicked save data. So again, I'm tracking that traceability, that auditability. You remember it was 1,000, and then I changed it to 1,100. If I come across here, 11,500 with the link to my Scratchpad. So I've got full visibility of the numbers and any changes or updates that were made to them. Let me show you another example of audit trail. And this one will also bring in the idea of eliminating linked files. As I come across here, as I look from May to June, 13,000 to 33,000, pretty significant jump. If I want to investigate that number, I can do a drill save. This will show me who did it, when they did it, and the fact that they used a completely different Excel input template to model or create that information. Clicking on View will open up that template for me. So again, I get out of having to link Excel files and trace one spreadsheet to another, etc. Vena is tracking all of that information for me, allowing me to easily navigate and see exactly how we got to that number. There's the 33,000. It has to do with the fact that I brought 3 new employees on in June. That's what's driving my salary expense up so dramatically. If there were additional tabs or supplemental details, I would be able to see that as well. So again, I'd sort of look to you to look through the lens of how easy it is to do this and think about how you're doing these things today. Vena really enables a lot of the processes that are in place, but it makes it much easier or faster to get to the root of the story or what's behind the numbers. One other thing I should point out here is the ability to have commentary. If I open this up, you can see that there's been some comments entered for these various cells. So again, you have this ability to provide additional supporting documentation or details. In this example, I could see who did it, and I'm able to get to those comments rather quickly and easily. Let me go ahead and close out of this template now. So we'll close this template down. We'll go back to my browser, and we'll check it in. Let's pretend now that I've completed my budget. So I've done all the appropriate input, etc. I'm going to go ahead and click on the Submit button. And when I click on Submit, you'll note that these all go to a view-only status. I can't make any further changes or updates. So what this avoids is you get a spreadsheet from me today, you get another one tomorrow, Friday the final version shows up, and Monday the final version shows up. So through the use of workflow, Vena is allowing you to selectively allow the right people to input data at the right times. We've been looking at using Excel as an input mechanism. Let's take a look at using it from a reporting standpoint. So I'm going to click on my report package here, and as you can see, I've got access to quite a number of reports. First one I'm going to open up is my income statement and balance sheet. I'll click on View. It'll open up in Excel, very similar to what we saw before, and it will give me the opportunity to choose what I want to look at. So I've got that dynamic or flexible nature. The report opens up, expenses, gross margin, months on the columns, accounts on the rows. But as an Excel user, if I want to add some of my own formatting or my own analytics in here, I can come up, quite simply, let's make the top 10% light red, and I'm good to go. So charts, graphs, formulas, additional analytics continue to be available to your users. However, these reports are much more powerful and flexible. I have the ability to do a cascade. And with cascade, let's say that I want to look at not only operating divisions, but Division A and the various departments that roll up to it. You can start to see how these reports within Vena are much more powerful and flexible with this ability to select the slice of data that I want to look at. Now that slice or those choices are also respective of security. If I can't see total organization or I can't see a particular department, I won't be presented with that as a choice. But what Vena is doing now is it's going to burst that out and create a tab for each one of those intersection points that I've selected and populate it with data. So quickly and easily, this one report now can replace an awful lot of reports that you may have in place in your organization today. As I look at this, you'll see that there's Division A. Those numbers have rolled up, so I've got that instant recalculation or aggregation. Here's my Department 101, the numbers that I input just a few moments ago appearing here. But if I want to look at these and get to additional detail, I can click on that. Coming up, doing the drill save, I can now see who did it. Frank Smith did it. I can see that he used a different template to input that. Clicking on view will take me down and show me the template that we were looking at just a few moments ago. So again, I've got that full sort of 360-degree view, being able to navigate down, investigate, and see exactly how a number was created or derived. As this opens up, you'll see here, there's the comments, there's the line item detail, the scratch pad, there's the 11,500. So quickly and easily, I'm able to get to the assumptions behind this number and see exactly what the thought process was. Before implementing Vena, a lot of organizations do this, but it's typically a phone call or an email, and then someone provides their supporting detail. They send a spreadsheet, they send a Word document, they send their backup detail. But within Vena, it's all encompassed within the application. And this becomes especially important if you're dealing with an organization that's geographically dispersed, where I may be crossing time zones, and it may be difficult to get in touch with somebody or get an answer in the time frame that I'm looking at. There's one example of a report. Let me show you another example here. Let's look at an expense variance analysis report. As I open this report up, this one will really highlight how a report within Vena can replace multiple Excel spreadsheets, really an infinite number of Excel spreadsheets if you think about it. When I open this report up, it's an actual to budget comparison with a dollar variance and a percent variance. But if I want to change this around a little bit, using simple drop downs here, let's make this a year-over-year comparison report. So if I come in here, now it becomes a year-over-year comparison report. I can take this one step further. Let's flip this back to 2017, and we'll flip my period here, and we'll make this a month-over-month or a period-over-period comparison report. So the ability to slice and dice and sift and sort information using these simple drop-downs is very key. Let me flip this back now to March, and we'll flip this back to budget. But you can see here, I can compare actual to budget, budget to forecast, forecast to version 1, on and on, slicing and dicing, sifting and sorting as appropriate using simple drop-downs. But I also have some other navigational paths that I can take down through this data. If I look at the salary expense here, I can come up and do a drill down. This will walk down that organizational hierarchy, showing me the salary expense for the various departments. Again, I can take that one step further by doing a drill save and ultimately drill out to the template that was used to input or model this information. Again, I'd ask you to think about how you do this today and the ease with which I've accomplished it here in terms of simple navigation for that Vena ribbon. One other thing that I'll point out, as we talk about 100% native Excel, I'd be willing to bet that all of you at some point have touched a pivot table recently. You continue to have access to pivot tables, but these pivot tables are drawing on that same data store. So I no longer have to import data into Excel or rekey it or copy and paste. I've got a pivot table ability here, which is drawing on that same data as my finished or polished reports. So you really have the best of all worlds in terms of being able to analyze this data, either through a finished, polished report like you see here, or more of a raw numeric form like a pivot table, as an example. One other method of analyzing data that I'll show you before I slip over to a manager view is if I come back here, you'll notice that I have a Word document and a PowerPoint file. Not only do we provide links to Excel, but we provide links to those applications as well. If I click on my PowerPoint, I'm presented with some choices. Very similar to what I saw before. I can choose the slice of data that I want to look at. I can download it into PowerPoint on my local PC. I've got support for Office Online, or I can create a PDF. Clicking on download here, it will open up PowerPoint locally, and it will refresh or recast that PowerPoint with information coming directly from Vena. So again, I can have this one PowerPoint, and I can use it month over month, quarter over quarter, year over year, etc. If you look at this PowerPoint here, I now have expenses, gross margin, and I've got an income statement embedded in this as well. So again, I sort of poll you, think about how you're doing this today. A lot of organizations, They have a PowerPoint deck, but they're typically either rekeying, copying and pasting, or importing information in there. And there's a huge opportunity for error there. If you type like I do, you transpose numbers, etc., and you go to the meeting, and if those numbers are incorrect, things tend to fall apart very quickly. A lot of our organizations at the end of the month-end close or at the end of a budget or a forecast cycle, they have some sort of a presentation they do to an external board of supervisors or board of directors, or call it what you will. One example that we had just recently, they had a 90-slide PowerPoint deck, and it took them about 3 days to update it. Every month they'd go in, the copy and paste, rekey, check, recheck, double check, make sure the numbers were all correct. When they showed them this capability of being able to import it directly into PowerPoint, this was a huge time saver. But I think more important than the 3 or 4 days they would save every month in getting ready for that management meeting was knowing that they could go to the management meeting with confidence, knowing that the numbers were accurate, they were auditable, they were traceable, and they didn't have to worry about getting called out of an incorrect number, an expense, or revenue line, etc. We've been looking at things from an end user perspective. I'm going to switch gears on you now and go in as more of a manager. So I'll go back to my login screen here, and we'll log in as a manager, and let's take a look at the workflow, because workflow is another key component. If you think about continuing to utilize Excel, you want to surround it with a workflow, a business process flow engine. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a workflow here in Vena. This is an example of what a workflow looks like. Now, these workflows are configured to mirror the processes that you have in place today. Let me explain what this workflow is doing here very quickly. I have the ability to input some drivers. Maybe I've got some HR accounts or other types of information that drive the calculations. So those drivers are input, they're reviewed. If they're approved, the process continues. Maybe I have some head office expenses that are ultimately allocated out to departments or allocated out to various other pieces of the organization. And then I get down to doing my departmental expenses. You'll also take note here that I have a reporting package. This reporting package is available throughout the process. But here at the end of the process, my management Excel reports and my PowerPoint management deck, those are not available until all the preceding steps have been completed. This is a polite way of keeping people from running reports until the appropriate reviews, sign-offs, and approvals have been done, so I don't get those early questions about the budget before it's been completed, or we're midstream in redoing the forecast and people start to ask questions. So with workflow, I can sort of keep them out of running those reports until the appropriate things have been done. Let me open up departmental expenses here and Department 101. This is where we were spending time a little bit earlier when we were in as Frank Smith. When I submitted it, it went over here to a Department 101 review. To change or update these workflows, I can add a new task here, and once I've added that new task, I can rewire the workflow, and the next time Frank comes in, he'll be directed through that new workflow process. The idea here is that if you need to change or update these, you don't have to go to your IT organization, or you don't necessarily have to come to Vena or other service providers or consultants. You can do it, handle it internally by a power user. A couple of other things very quickly. If I look at what's behind one of these boxes, I have the ability to use smart dates. Smart dates allow me to say this task is due 5 days or 10 days or 20 days after the process starts. This is one of the things that allows them to be reusable in the sense that if I kick it off on April 1st, June 3rd, or July 15th, the due date will flex accordingly. If I want to post new supporting documents, I can attach a new document here. Users will have access to it. I can also attach a new input schedule. The next time they come through, they'll have access to that new input schedule. A couple of other things to showcase here. Status tracker. If you think about going through a budget or a forecast, the question comes up, where are we at? How are we moving through it? Who's done? Who's submitted? Who's reviewed? A lot of organizations, before implementing Vena, that's a standalone Excel spreadsheet with color coding, but it's manually updated. As people submit their files, I flip their status to green. If I need more detail, I flip their status to blue or yellow or some other color coding. But in Vena, it's all happening automatically. Here's Department 101. Frank Smith is responsible for it. It's now under review, and the manager is responsible to review it. So here in one place, I can see exactly how we're traversing any of the processes that we might use Vena for. So I've got that automation or that workflow wrapped around these Excel templates, ensuring not only that users are following the process, but the ability to monitor or track where we're at and how things are going along. If I come down here now to process audit, status tracking gives me visibility to a process that's in flight or ongoing. Process audit, on the other hand, provides me visibility as to where the users spent their time. Typically after a budgeting or month-end close, account reconciliation, or any other process that you might use Vena for, we have a meeting and we talk about what went well and what we can improve upon. Process audit is a big contributor to that meeting because it allows you to see how the users navigated the process and where they spent their time. What we hear from our customers is the ability to take that budgeting process from 3 months to 2 months, or 27 days to 20 days, or you complete the sentence there in terms of making it more efficient. And with that efficiency, I'm able to be more agile. I do the budget, but then the budget can become the basis for the January reforecast, which becomes the basis for the February forecast, and that then allows me to do that expense variance analysis report and see how we're doing as an organization, and we can take corrective action sooner rather than later. If I find that there's some challenges coming up, maybe in the June, July, or August timeframe, I'm able to begin working and making those adjustments today, as opposed to when we get to those particular months. Also, by allowing the users to input that information, all of my stakeholders buy into it, because I'm not just doing it a broad brush approach at the corporate level. I can have my stakeholders inputting it, supplying all the appropriate detail and items underneath, so I've got their full buy-in and support as they begin the reforecasting process, January, February, March, etc. So from a demo perspective, that really is what I wanted to walk you through. I wanted to walk you through sort of a nice broad overview demo of how you can embrace Excel and continue to utilize Excel. A lot of the things that we talked about, eliminating the linked files, the ability with a database behind it to drill and investigate from one file to another. And you've got a single repository of those facts. So regardless of point of entry, they're presented in a report. So you no longer have a meeting where two people come to the meeting with different reports and they've got different numbers. It also becomes the place where narratives, supporting details, additional models are all housed and available to do. I've got that instant recalculation or aggregation. So as people are inputting their budget or the forecast, I can report on it immediately and see where we're at. And I can control access to it, ensuring that we follow those processes through the implementation of workflow. So that is a very, very quick overview of Vena, but hopefully it gives you a nice broad brush approach or a view of the application and how you can really embrace and utilize Excel moving forward, eliminating a lot of the challenges or bad things that Excel hell, as Clark called it, but really continuing to utilize the power and flexibility that exists within Excel.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. So I want to encourage everyone to ask any questions through the chat window. We've got 4 or 5 already, and I'm going to answer them in just a moment. But just to recap, again, we fully recognize that these Excel-based collaborative business processes like budgeting and forecasting and some of the reporting can be very problematic for all the reasons that we've chatted about earlier. But we're also at the same time firm believers that embracing Excel and removing the problems associated with Excel is the best path forward. And it's an approach that's fueled the growth of our company. We work with JMT to deliver this solution to nonprofit organizations, and it works very, very well in that sense. So with that, so there are a few questions here, if you'll bear with me for a second. So the first question is does this work, does Vena work with the online version of Excel? And the answer is yes. So Vena supports all of the modern versions of Excel, including the online version of Excel, which is great because a lot of people, organizations are adopting that platform or that technology. And you can still enter your budgets, do your forecasting, do your reporting right from that Excel Online experience. Second question is there support for Macintoshes? And the answer to that is yes. So people who have Macs and have the Excel version of the Mac, I forget what it's called, the Office for Macs, I think is the name of it. We fully support that as well. And or you could use the online version of Excel on a Macintosh. Third question here is, do you have non-for-profit specific capabilities? And the answer to that is yes. So we have a lot of things baked into Vena to support nonprofits, things like grant management, and a lot of this has come from JMT because they're the nonprofit experts. So they've done a fabulous job of deploying Vena in a variety of ways to support nonprofits, and they've been able to do it in a way that adds specific functionality to nonprofit organizations. And the last question here is, are there nonprofit organizations using Vena? And the answer to that is yes. We have lots of I'd say dozens and dozens, multi-dozens of entities that are nonprofits, and we don't focus on nonprofits specifically. JMT does, but Vena does not. JMT has a lot of NFP clients, but we have a lot that are associations. We have a lot of museums. We have a lot of healthcare-related providers. We have a lot of charitable organizations and foundations. So to name a few, like the Ford Foundation, which is our gargantuan foundation, they use Vena. We have the Muscular Dystrophy Association, MDA is using Vena, and many, many others. So we're quite experienced in this space as well. So let me just look real quick at this other question. How do actual expenses and revenue get fed into Vena? So from an actual perspective, Vena has a direct connect to many of the common cloud-based general ledgers or financial systems, like Sage Intacct, many of the Microsoft products, NetSuite, Financial Force, and many of the others. We have a direct connect to those systems. In other cases, if it's a legacy system that we don't have a direct connect to, we can export a trial balance out of those out of those financial systems and import that trial balance right into Vena. So in every one of our implementations, every deployment of Vena, 100% of them has to integrate with the underlying financial systems because we're very dependent on it. We're very good at doing that. It's a good question. How does is Google Docs supported? So today it is not. We are researching that, and we have an active project to see if Google Sheets could be a good, a similar type of user interface or experience like Excel is, but we're not committed to releasing that yet. We're still experimenting with that. Are there time and tracking, expense tracking softwares that work with Vena? So Vena, similar to financial systems, Vena has to be able to, or it's very commonly required to pull in HR information from time and expense tracking systems or from HR systems like Paychex or Pay.com or many of the others. So we're quite experienced at that, just like we are with integrating with financial systems. How long is a typical implementation? That's a loaded question because that could vary greatly, as you know. But a typical one is about 6 to 8 weeks of calendar time. So if you adopt Vena, we can have it up and running, say by like July 1st in that type of time frame. It's not months, it's not quarters. It's measured in weeks, typically. Last question here is how many years worth of data can be kept? And do you have trend reporting to see trends over multiple years, I think is what they're saying. And the answer to that is yes, you can. We do trend reporting. We do year-over-year comparison, but you can look at months or quarters or years over a long period of time. We do well with large utility companies, and they typically have a 20 to 30-year time horizon. And so they do their long-term strategic planning and their long-term capital planning over that type of time horizon from a forward-looking perspective. But from a backward-looking perspective, we can house within Vena any number of periods or years of history. So it's pretty much unlimited in that sense. Okay. One more question here. Do you revise projections, the revised projections end up changing annual budgets in the GL? That's a great question. We get asked that a lot. So the answer to that is yes. Once you reproject in Vena, or maybe you create your original budget in Vena, we can take that budget data set and import it into your general ledger if you have existing, which is helpful if you have existing reports, budget to actual reports and things like that. And if you do a revision, you can move that into the GL as well. Many GLs nowadays allow you to keep multiple versions in the general ledger. So like Sage Intacct, I believe, you could hold multiple versions or multiple forecast revisions in the GL, and we can populate that from Vena to that financial system. A lot of times, though, just to add to that, a lot of times we see customers might do that the first couple of cycles, but then they realize they end up doing a lot of their budget to actual variance reporting right in Vena anyway, and they cease moving that data, that budget data or that forecast data into the underlying ERP. Okay. So with that, Melissa, would you like to say some parting comments here on what's next?
Yeah, thank you, Clark, and thank you, everyone, for the great questions. So just as a reminder, if you want to learn more about Vena and the remaining 5 reasons that Vena can help you, you can download our white paper. We will also be sending that out to you tomorrow. And if you want to talk with one of our solutions consultants more about Vena, you can visit our website and click on book a demo. And then we also would love for anyone who is interested to join us at our annual conference. It's called Innovate. It takes place in May, at the end of May, May 20th through 23rd in Connecticut at the Foxwoods Resort and Casino. And it's a great place to get hands-on training. Vena will be doing a day-and-a-half pre-conference with us all about financial planning and analysis. And then we have other great training opportunities there as well. So for more information, you can go to jmtconsulting.com and click on the pop-up ad, and it'll bring you right to our site. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I want to thank Clark and Jeff for their time. We hope you enjoyed the presentation and that you'll join us for future events. And with that, I will end the webinar. Everyone have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you.